Welcome to Let's Talk Cancer. My name is Cary and I'm the CEO of the Union for International Cancer Control. Around 8 million people die because of tobacco consumption every single year, leading the tobacco industry to search for new users. Increasingly, it is targeting youth in the hope of hooking a new generation of tobacco products and creating lifelong consumers. According to the World Health Organization, most of the current adult tobacco users worldwide started tobacco use during adolescent years. Nearly 9 out of 10 smokers start smoking before 18 years of age. In order to protect the youth from tobacco industry interference, we must ensure that their perspectives are heard. That's why UICC is welcoming on Let's Talk Cancer Agamroop Kaur, who was awarded the National Youth Advocate of the Year Award by the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids and created a documentary called Big Tobacco, Bigger Epidemic. And David Planas Maluenda, a global health policy making and research specialist working at the Spanish Association Against Cancer in Zaragoza, and a youth ambassador against cancer in the European Cancer League. In this podcast, we'll discuss the tobacco industry tactics from influence on social media to the alarming increase in vaping. We'll also delve into solutions through informed advocacy, strict regulatory measures, and community engagement in creating a tobacco-free future. Agamroop and David, thank you so much for joining us today. Perhaps I could just start off with, the challenge that we face with tobacco is it does kill half its users, and those who don't quit will probably die of cancer or lung cancer at some point, taking off the last 10 years, 15 years of their life. Do you think the younger generation are really aware of the long-term impacts of smoking when they start smoking?
I think the short answer is no. If you want the short answer, I think young people do not care about the future impact of the present actions, and it has an impact on the use of tobacco and related products. Nowadays, I think we live in a time with ephemeral fashions. We have very short-term thinking and caring about things that may happen in many years that not worry young people.
What about you, Agamroop?
I would totally add to that. I think here in California, we especially see a greater awareness that exists around the use of tobacco products and the linkage with cancers and diseases. But like David said, it doesn't always impact the short responses that we might have in the moment.
So it's not as if it's remote and distant. It's often grandparents who've died. My grandparents who smoked died of lung cancer. It is in the family. You attend the funeral. The discussion takes place. So why is it that does not get through to younger people, that there's a consequence of a lifetime of smoking, that person has died through a cancer?
The new products that come out aren't seen as dangerous as necessarily a cigarette. So when you see vaping, when it was originally marketed by the tobacco industry, it was seen as a water vapor that you were using. And I think that creates the perception that, this product is safe. And that deception is really a really good tactic for the industry in getting more users on their product, because now we can't even sort of conquer that image of safety that comes into the mind with these new innovations.
Let's talk about those new products. So how are they marketed then? How do you perceive them being marketed to the younger generation? David, why don't you start?
Yeah, marketing is changing the picture. Nowadays, the way they do advertisements is really different than before. Before in Spain, they were very common to see in newspapers, in television and radio, and now it's banned. So they have to look now at strategies and target new groups. Young people start smoking in a really, really early age, and the industry knows it. So they target these people in where they are, in internet, the most of them.
You're suggesting that it's social media is playing a larger role. What do you see, or what do young people see on social media?
I think it's really the influencer content that's the biggest piece. I think what better way to reach youth than the influencers that they're following, right? Like the people that they look up to, the people that they're entertained by. So the industry's done a really good job of creating this social and party scene that's really attractive to youth because they're influencers and they're celebrities doing it. And I think it's a really great resource for them to be able to meet youth exactly where they are. Youth all the time are on social media for resources, for entertainment, for meeting their friends, for being connected worldwide. And it's just a great entry point for the industry.
I mean, when I was, I'll say your age, many decades ago, you could see smoking in Hollywood films. It was on the TV. Formula One, which I love, it was on the side of all the cars in Formula One.
Yeah, and product placement in movies, in Hollywood, in TV series is still a problem actually, principally in Netflix, HBO, or any platforms, video on demand platforms. And when they appear in movies, television shows, music videos, video games, it normalizes and glamorizes smoking.
Agamroop, you've spoken about the 3 A's, which are attractiveness, appealability, and availability. Can you explain to us what you mean when you talk about the 3 A's?
Sure. The attractiveness aspect is exactly what we're talking about right here. Being on social media, being in media with celebrities, just creating that normalization of vaping and tobacco product usage. And the appealability, I would say, really comes from the product itself, the flavors, the colors, the way it's placed in different advertisements, basically like the thing that really addicts youth to the product. And then the availability is really that aspect of where do you see this product being accessible? Is it something that youth can buy right off online, or is it being sold in stores around youth-centric areas? Like, is there a store across the street from a school, right? And how are youth being able to access these products? If it's really easy to do so, and the product is so attractive and addictive, youth are going to be wanting to use vaping products more and being able to do so. So it's really about all those 3 components that go into that product.
If the industry is so good at doing this enticement and getting people to start smoking, why is the anti-industry people like me so bad at doing the complete opposite? So, David, what's your view on that?
First of all, not having the same amount of money to invest here. They have a lot of money and they do so many campaigns. They have so many influencer people that do campaigns, and it's so difficult to contrast. And we also need a stricter regulation from the governments. They have no regulations with new products, with product placement, with advertising, and we need governments to take part here, because the imaginary about this product is really positive, especially among young people. They don't see vaping as bad as smoking traditional tobacco, and the industry knows it and uses it in their favor.
And to add to that, I think the policy aspect is especially crucial. And I think even more than that, it's can we make health as attractive as the industry makes tobacco products? And when we could do that through the educational resources, through the marketing, through the industry, make health easy to be done. Health shouldn't be a chore, right? And I think youth often think of it as that way. So changing that perception could go into making long-term consequences for the better.
I think we have to see our mistakes too. And maybe we are talking about health, and young people do not worry about health, and they worry about economy, environment, inequity, gender. They have another worries, and we can talk about tobacco from another perspectives, and maybe this can be a solution.
I mean, that may be a good pathway, actually, because the industry itself is accountable for so much for deforestation, poor quality agriculture, and the stubs on cigarettes, for example, contain so many chemicals, and they're washed into the rivers and the seas, and that is certainly something which I know my children, who are 29 and 27, are more concerned of. They don't smoke, but that is something which is important to them about the climate and the impact on agriculture, etc. One of the issues that's raised quite a bit but not fully understood is the link between tobacco use and mental health.
I think a misconception that often comes in youth minds is using vaping as a means of coping. And what we've really seen through the data, for example, in a study out of the American Heart Association shows that people who are using vaping products or tobacco products are actually more experiencing anxiety symptoms and depression symptoms. And that what really goes to show us is we need to be able to create educational content around what are actual coping mechanisms to deal with stress, instilling that into our education system so that youth are able to gain these mechanisms and carry it out for their long life after that.
What about yourself, David?
Yeah, and as we see that smoking can cause, for example, anxiety, when you talk with health people and you say, why do you smoke? Why you start smoking or vaping? And they say because it's calming and relaxing and it quits anxiety. And we are seeing that duality between the data and the reality and the perception of health people. I think they are really concerned about their mental health and all the problems related with it, but not with the causes, the real causes of the issues in their mental health problems.
It seems a shame that you take on a product to address what you think helps your mental health, but actually is of greater harm to you overall in the longer term.
And if I could just add one thing, there was a campaign done by the Truth Initiative on this depression stick. It's actually something that I've seen over Twitter again and again. And I think that imagery of the vape being a depression stick was really great at just like sort of formulating that mental image that this isn't something that's going to help you, it's actually going to worsen you. And so I think campaigns like that are really powerful.
We still need, though, the workable policies which are attached to traditional cigarettes, like pricing with taxation, labeling, public places not being used, etc. Is that something would you see as being critical with regard to vaping and e-cigarettes as well?
Actually, it's funny that we bring this up because I am actually in Sacramento today to work on a bill to really continue to create that limitation around vaping products and honestly all flavored tobacco products. 2 years ago in California, actually we've been working on it for 4 years. We originally got a bill passed to ban all flavored tobacco products in 2020, but the industry was able to sue and delay it till 2022. And now went in enforcement in 2022, it created a great change. We see a lot less of an accessibility standpoint for flavored tobacco products. And we've now come back in 2024 this year to really create further enforcement. So understanding what is a flavored tobacco and what isn't, and really creating a list so that it's clearly noticeable and so that enforcement is easier. And I think that really goes to show that California is very stringent on wanting to make health a reality.
Yeah, I think so. Here in Spain, it happens the same. The access is really, really easy to young people, even minors. The tobacco it's regulated here to minors, but they can access really easy in every supermarket, in every shop, not only in tobacco shops. In every shop you can see vapers, and it's a real problem.
I was in a meeting, I think it was last year, and we were talking about the fact that the traditional cigarette has really hardly changed over 50 years. I mean, it's the size, shape, filter, box, color, content. It's not really changed. One of the challenges with e-cigarettes and vaping is that the products, there are numerous products coming out from multiple companies, and they're iterating so quickly that it's actually very difficult to pin any one of them down to say whether they're good or bad, because there's not enough time to identify whether they're good or bad. Now, my concern is that gives liberty to the industry to do what they want, because they know that there's not going to be sufficient research to show there's a link between their product and cancer, because the delay of 10, 20 years, their product will be out, they've made their money, they've disappeared. So do you have the same concern? I'll start, David, perhaps you could start.
I'm really concerned about it too, because I'm seeing that the new products, that marketing strategies, that all the industry is doing is going really faster than us as society, as regulation, investigations, and knowledge around the products, and that makes that people are not aware about the problems. We have not solid papers talking about it, and it's a real problem.
Agamroop, what about yourself?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think we've seen that with our legislation having to try to keep up as well, where when we passed that legislation 2022, we included all flavored tobacco products, including menthol. And the industry was able to find sort of a workaround and has created menthol-like products. So products that do the same thing that menthol does in terms of making it feel like less like making like a cooling agent and having that harm feel less when you're using a tobacco product, created products that do the exact same thing, but they aren't called menthol. And so what we really wanted to do with updating the policies, include that definition to really ensure that they're not able to create products at all that include any sort of liking of flavors. And so it really goes to show that we have to continuously try to update the policy and be very quick about it before they can innovate even more.
Is there anything that you think we should be doing more to educate governments or influence governments to avoid the influence of the industry?
Yeah, I think that we need to create some evaluation indicators because it's a really complex issue, and we need to evaluate factors as accessibility, advertisement, perception, consumption, and this requires time, knowledge, and money. But this evaluation gives us data to work with and to take action.
What about yourself, Agamroop?
I would like to add to that on two components. I think the first one I would say is it would be really great if we could have a transparency measure between which government officials are taking money from the industry so that we understand as voters who we want to elect and put into office and make those decisions for ourselves. And I think that understanding would really create the public information to be able to then make the correct choices that we think would represent ourselves. On the government standpoint, in terms of educating government officials themselves, is something that I've had a little bit of experience with in creating my documentary, really to create like just a small resource that government officials can be educated on why a policy is important, what research is saying about it, and make it so persuasive that they can't say no. When we say that we want to protect children, how could you say no to that, right? And so really instilling that within government officials.
The other thing I think they may need educating on is this line from the industry that, for example, vaping and e-cigarettes is low risk. But I don't think people really understand what the industry is saying when it says this is a lower risk than traditional cigarettes. It just means that your chances, if they're right, and we don't know if they're right, your chances of dying through this are lower than if you use a traditional cigarette.
We did a study from the Spanish Association Against Cancer last year, and we presented some data about what young people think about these new products. And the imaginary is like many years ago with traditional tobacco, but they think it's better because it doesn't last bad smells, that is easier to quit, that it's fancy, that they want to share experiences with their friends with vapors and e-cigarettes. It's like the imaginary, it's very good, and they don't think it's so harmful.
How do you evaluate then the effectiveness of current anti-smoking campaigns targeted at young people? Do you think they're good? And if they're not good, how could they be improved?
In terms of the anti-smoking campaigns, in the work I've done, I've seen it being done in several different ways. I think the biggest impactful one is when it's done from peer to peer, when we're talking from youth educating their classmates or youth talking and having discussions with their own friend groups. And I think that's what really creates the norm change. And I've seen it done in some great creative ways here in California, where we have the Stanford Reach Lab Youth Action Board, and they host a forum theater. So essentially recreating these scenarios where youth might be in a peer pressure situation and how do you get out of that. And I think that's so impactful because it teaches a youth that this might be something that you are in the future, whether it's high school or college or beyond, and you can have real skills to say no. And learning how to do that is just so impactful and can create you from can create the difference between having a lifetime addiction and not. So I think that's really impactful. But in terms of sort of the campaigns around just like general education, they can definitely be done better through social media. We have so many tactics that we can use, and just really utilizing influencers in our own movements would be an amazing turnaround.
David, any views?
I just want to add that we don't have to work for young people, but with young people, to achieve our goals in the fight against tobacco. For example, last year we hosted the ECTO, the European Conference on Tobacco Health, and we started a youth alliance with other Spanish and European entities, and we presented it in the Conference of the Parties 10 in Panama with Agamroop. And we are having really great results with a lot of entities and young people talking about tobacco and raising their voices and making advocacy. And I think it's really important to work with young people. And I want to make a call also to young people that hear us, that they can take part, that they can join us and fight against tobacco, because it's always that affect everyone.
So how did you two get involved in all of this? David, how did you start?
Well, I started while I was working in a low-income neighborhood here in Zaragoza. I saw a really big problem with tobacco consumption, and they don't have any concerns. And I was like, well, I think there is a problem here. And young people, they worried about everything but tobacco. And then I started working here in the Spanish Association Against Cancer. I saw the reality, what tobacco is causing, and how can we react, and what can we do to fight it. And it's so important to educate people in the streets, in the schools, but it's so important to make advocacy and to talk with politicians to raise our voices. It's so important to share our message in every statement, and that's what I'm doing now and how I'm getting involved.
And Agamroop, how about yourself?
Yeah, I got involved around 7 to 8 years ago when I was in middle school, and that really stemmed from seeing my peers using Juul products, and at the time nobody knew what Juul products were. We still all believed that this was water vapor, that there wasn't any harms, and when I was talking to my health teacher once in a conversation and she brought up that these products were actually really harmful, in my mind I was so confused. I was like, if it's so harmful, why is everyone doing it? And I think that question is something that I worked to answer at that time, and that realization just pushed me forward to wanting to educate more people, to protect our communities. And I have siblings as well. And I definitely don't want them to be getting into this. So that's really why I continue that advocacy.
Well, I'm glad you're both in it. I was on a conference the other week, and it was the last session on the last day, and it was actually a packed room. And there was, I'd say the average age of the people in this conference was at 40 to 50, something like that. And a young lady put her hand up at the back and asked a question of the panel, which I was on. And she was saying, I'm a young person in this environment. I've got great ideas, but no one listens to me. Do you feel that the cancer community listens to the young people?
Everyone talks about young people, the importance of listening to young people. And there is no young people in important places, and we need to be heard, but we don't have the space to be heard.
I think I totally agree with David. I think we're both at COP10 together, and that was the first time any youth were at COP10. And I think that really goes to show after 10 conferences, when we're talking about youth, every single conference about an issue that affects youth so prominently, why weren't we included from the beginning, right? And I think that's sort of reminiscent of something that we should be doing across the board. I have had experiences that I think have been really great for me to be able to represent my voice in my community, and I'm really grateful for those. But I think there still is a large amount of work that needs to be done, including youth, in these solutions.
David, now your work on interest focus on how commercial, environmental, economic and social factors determine health outcomes, which is also a focus of UIC's work as well, actually, and our Close the Care Gap campaign for World Cancer Day in the last 3 years has been about this sort of thing. So how do these factors intersect with the tobacco industry interference and the need for stricter government control and regulation of tobacco? How does it all work together?
I think there are many studies that link different factors to smoking problems, like socioeconomic status, age, that we are talking about young people, age is one of them, ethnicity, Agamroop will know it really good in the US, gender or sexual orientations are some of them. The tobacco industry aims to make money by campaigning, diversifying products, and interfering in policies to maximize its profits. And countering the lobbying of such a large industry is really difficult, but it's not impossible. We have to share a positive message too. Health bodies must take part in this, but they should know that they are not alone. Just as it affects to all the groups mentioned above, we can count on them to speak out and find out what they need to know about tobacco, how to tackle it, and make it effective policies. This is something that we promote every day, and we are trying to do it and having great experiences.
Oh, that's super. And Agamroop, your documentary, The Big Tobacco Bigger Epidemic, it's addressed to the President and Congress in the USA. So what did you hope to achieve through that documentary?
That documentary was about creating a resource that's easily accessible to policymakers, to youth, and to really anyone in society that wants to learn about what the e-cigarette epidemic really looks like. At the time when I was researching, I noticed that there was so many different information, so many different research articles, so many people to access and talk to. And so in the process of learning myself, I was trying to see how would I want someone else to learn this? What would make it easy for them? And so creating that 5 to 6 minute documentary as just a small resource that's really persuasive in building policy is what I hope to achieve. And I think just seeing the success with it has just made me just really grateful for having taken that opportunity and wanting to do something a little bit outside the box, and has led me to other educational initiatives as well.
What is happening in the fight against the tobacco industry and the use of vaping and e-cigarettes? What are you proud of? What do you think is working? And if people listen to this from around the world, what could they take away and maybe push for in their own country? What experiences have you got that's really maybe got a potential of making a big change?
In Spain, we have a regulation of tobacco, but we think it's not enough. We need to take part. And we have started the smoke-free spaces where we liberate some places from tobacco smoke that are not currently regulated by law. And we chose these spaces by the presence of children and teenagers, like park, stadiums, swimming pools, and other places. And people accepted really good, and local governments joined the action too. And this week, the national government has announced a change in the tobacco regulation. So we are really happy about this new.
That's super, David. Agamroop, what about yourself?
The hope comes from those youth alliances. Just recently, this April 1st, Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids hosts the National Day of Action, where youth across the country are holding events in their communities, whether that's a school event or an event to educate their policymakers or a march at the Capitol. And that really gives hope, because now they're able to come together and create that norm change, create the policy changes. I hosted one at my campus at UCLA just to really create what we did specifically was to have mental health resources and cessation resources for students on campus that want to quit. And so attacking that issue from different realms in our own communities, I think really goes to create a powerful message nationwide, and we do it together. So that's what's really empowering about it.
Super. You're both inspirational. Agamroop and David, thank you for joining us today. If you're interested in tobacco control, why not listen to episode 20 on tobacco and alcohol industry tactics, and episode 4 on the environmental damage caused by tobacco production. Please do get involved this World No Tobacco Day on May 31st. You can find out more information about tobacco control, as well as social media toolkits to use.